What does a dystopian anime, a Tom Cruise thriller, and a predictive surveillance system operating in the real world have in common? They all believe that they can see the future, and they all claim it's for our own good. Welcome back to Magus in the Media, where we break down storytelling, myth, and esoteric philosophy hiding in plain sight. This time, in the algorithmic gods of surveillance and prediction. Today, we're diving into 3 systems. The Sibyl System from Psychopass, the Pre-Crime Division from Minority Report, and the Palantir platform that exists right now in the real world. Each of these systems claims to keep us safe, but beneath that promise is a deeper question, one that reaches into myth, gnosis, and the nature of free will itself. What happens when the oracle becomes the judge? In Psychopass, society is run by the Sybil System, a governing intelligence that constantly scans your mind and determines your threat level. Your very psychology is judged, scored, and recorded. And if your score is too high, you're either medicated, detained, or outright eliminated altogether. But here's the twist. Sibyl isn't an artificial intelligence in the traditional sense. It's actually made up of, spoiler alert, human brains. Specifically, people who are criminally asymptomatic, meaning they can't be detected by normal moral profiling. In other words, sociopaths. The Sybil System is a collective mind that governs through a kind of sacred calculus. It's not interested in morality or justice or redemption, only order. It's a system that measures your potential to disrupt harmony and acts accordingly. The terrifying part, it works. Crime is down, people are mostly compliant, the cost is invisible until it's your mind under the microscope. Now, let's talk about Palantir. This isn't fiction. This is real. Palantir is a data analytics company founded by Peter Thiel. Yes, the same Peter Thiel tied to the so-called PayPal mafia, that early Silicon Valley power circle whose fingerprints are still all over the digital world we live in today. Palantir is named after the 7 seeing stones in the Lord of the Rings. The Palantiri are spherical, glass-like, or translucent stone objects used for communication and intelligence gathering. Doesn't this sound like something almost every person on Earth carries on their person? These ancient seeing stones in the Lord of the Rings are used to watch distant places. But in the story, the more you use them, the more they use you. The Eye of Sauron is seemingly always watching. And then the company Palantir claims to help governments track terrorists, stop crime, and make better decisions through data-driven insights. Sounds great, right? But behind that high-tech branding is something darker. Palantir's software is used by police departments, military operations, and international intelligence agencies, as well as our country's very own CIA. It takes data from everywhere: financial records, social media posts, geolocation, law enforcement databases, and builds real-time predictive models of human behavior. In practice, it's a surveillance and control system, a digital mirror that doesn't reflect who you are, but who the system thinks you might become. Several investigative reports have highlighted that Palantir's platforms have supported targeted military operations, including real-time intelligence during state-led airstrikes in global conflict zones. This isn't just surveillance, it's algorithmic warfare. And even when it's not guiding missiles, it's quietly constructing profiles, scanning behavior, and labeling potential threats. Just like the predictive systems we thought only existed in dystopian fiction. Palantir doesn't scan your mind like the Sybil System, but it doesn't have to. It scans your life. And in doing so, it builds a version of you that law enforcement, corporations, and governments can judge without your knowledge and without due process. The company says it has civil liberties teams to keep it ethical. It says it builds audit trails and transparency safeguards. But as we all know, those safeguards don't prevent injustice. They only give it a technical interface. It's the same myth we've seen before, that the machine is neutral, that the system is wise, that the overseer is objective. But when a company builds a tool that helps decide who lives and who dies, that's not neutral. That's a digital demiurge pretending to be divine. Palantir promises clarity in a chaotic world, but in the hands of an empire, that clarity becomes a weapon, not to protect the soul, but to control the story. Then there's Minority Report, adapted from the sci-fi Gnostic himself, Philip K. Dick. The film gives us the pre-crime division, a unit that uses 3 psychic precogs to predict murders before they ever happen. Once someone is seen committing a crime in a vision, they're arrested, even if they've never even had the chance to act on said crime. The film asks the essential question: if you would commit a crime but haven't yet, are you guilty? And more importantly, can you be certain the vision was inevitable? These oracles are worshipped like gods, submerged in water, their words interpreted by machines, but their prophecy is just that. It's a story that shapes action. And the deeper irony, the system is believed because it's supposedly always been right. So nobody ever questions the structure until somebody does. And we all know what happens once you question the system. You become the next target. So what do these 3 systems have in common? All of them are predictive machines that claim they can see into the human soul. All of them reduce life to data, prediction, and probability, and all of them are used not to liberate, but to control. The Sibyl System filters out the unfit. Pre-crime arrests the potential. Palantir builds a digital profile of you and decides whether you are a person or a problem. The systems don't create order. They enforce obedience, and they call it peace. They turn prediction into preemptive punishment. They ask you to trust them, even when the price is your freedom. In the esoteric traditions, especially Gnostic and Hermetic thought, there's a figure called the demiurge. This is the false god, the blind architect of the material world. He builds a system that mimics divine order, but traps the soul in illusion. Sibyl is a demiurge, so is pre-crime, and so, arguably, is Palantir. These systems are obsessed with removing uncertainty. They hate ambiguity, and they fear chaos. But in every mystical tradition, chaos is where transformation begins. These types of systems treat unpredictability as a sin. But unpredictability is the soul's birthright to grow, to choose, to fall, and to rise again. That's what it means to be human. And these systems, they'd rather you never take that risk. You cannot be spiritually free if your life is decided by a statistical model. And you cannot become who you are if you are judged before you act. These oracles don't just watch, they define. And that's where the real danger lies. Here's the core ethical trap. When you believe you can predict evil, you start to punish people for who they are, not for what they do. That's the logic of authoritarianism in sacred disguise. And it's seductive because it feels just. It feels like control. It feels like safety. But ask any mystic, any philosopher, and any real spiritual teacher. There is no wisdom without uncertainty. These systems deny the soul's mystery. They offer clarity, but it comes at the price of human dignity. A system like Palantir doesn't just shape policy, it enables violence at scale, cloaked in the language of security. And once you make morality a machine's decision, you've already abdicated it. If we're going to live in a world increasingly ruled by data oracles, we need to remember the stories that warned us. Minority Report wasn't a blueprint. Psychopass wasn't an instruction manual. They were cautionary tales. And yet here we are. The question isn't whether the Sybil System or pre-crime or Palantir is accurate. The question is whether accuracy should ever replace autonomy. Because once you believe the oracle is always right, you stop believing in yourself. And that's when the real crime begins. Not in the streets, but in the soul. Thanks for watching Magus in the Media. If this video has got you thinking, share it, comment below. Let's talk about where we're headed and whether we still have time to steer. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, and remember, in a world that tries to predict you, choosing the unknown is an act of resistance.